Summary of Paul's Case by Willa Cather. The first scene of Paul's case shows teenage Paul in front of a group of teachers and his principal at Pittsburgh High School, where he has been grounded for rude behavior that is never fully explained. For his teachers, Paul's obvious dislike of them is offensive, especially his English teacher, who leads the charges against him. However, when they decide to let him back in, they all feel a little embarrassed at how dramatic they were. Paul, who is tall and thin and wears a red carnation in his buttonhole, smiles and listens with his usual arrogant look, even though his hands are quivering a little. As soon as he is let out of school, he runs down the hill humming and goes straight to Carnegie Hall, where he works as an usher. Paul is jittery and runs up and down the halls. His excitement is only short-lived when his English teacher walks in. As soon as it starts, he falls in love with the German singer, who he finds romantic and attractive even though she is older. He starts to feel sad and irritable after the show, so instead of going home, he follows the singer to the Skenley, a hotel, and looks longingly through the windows into the fancy inside. Finally, he takes the train back to his nice, middle-class neighborhood on Cordelia Street. Paul doesn't want to face his father and try to explain where he's been because he hates his dull, dreary house. So he sneaks in through a basement window and stays awake for hours, scared of the rats and amused by making up stories. On that Sunday, Paul's dad, mom, and sisters take a break from Sabbath school to talk with other neighbors on the front porch about business and other everyday things. Paul is almost depressed because he is bored, but every once in a while, like when a clerk talks about his boss's trip to the Mediterranean, Paul's mind is stirred by the thought of such beautiful colors and sights. He nervously asks his dad after dinner if he can go to a friend's house to get help with his homework. His dad gives Paul a dime for the streetcar but doesn't want to give it to him. Instead of going to his friends, Paul goes to the Sunday night rehearsals of a company at a downtown theater. Charlie Edwards, one of the players, lets Paul hang out and helps him get dressed. People say that Paul's theater is like a fairy tale world where he can escape the confines of his house and school. There is a strong implication that Paul is gay here and many other times in the story. There are also strong hints that Edwards is gay and has taken Paul under his wing, though it's still not clear what kind of relationship they have. But Paul feels even worse when he goes on these trips and then comes back to the classroom. This helps him deal with it by making up stories about his star friends and the trips he's about to take to California or other places. He can only deal with how alone he feels at school by either making fun of everything or making fun of his teachers and his work. He finally errs when he tells his teachers that his work at the theater is getting in the way of his schoolwork. The principal then talks to Paul's father, who pulls him out of school and hires him at a company called Denny and Carlson's. The players in the company laugh bitterly when they hear that Paul has made their lives sound glamorous in his mind. They agree with Paul's father and teachers that he is a bad case. The story's second part starts on a train going from Pittsburgh to New York. With the help of some stolen money from Denny and Carlson's, Paul is running away from his life in Pittsburgh. He goes on a shopping spree as soon as he gets to New York, getting a new suit, linens, dress clothes, shoes, a hat, a silver scarf pin, and travel bags. After that, he goes to his hotel, the Waldorf. After Paul asks the bellboy to bring up some flowers, everything seems to be fine. Before taking a nap, he bathes and puts on a fancy red robe. When he wakes up, he sees he's wasting hours of his valuable free time. It snows outside, and Paul rides in a carriage to and from Central Park. As he walks, he sees windowsills with bright flower arrangements that stand out against the white snow. He thinks that these flowers are safe from the harsh world. As soon as he gets back to the hotel, the dining room and the opera that night make him feel overwhelmed by all the sensory joys and visual spectacles. He doesn't feel lonely at all. It looks like Cordelia Street isn't real anymore and that New York was made just for him. He can be himself without having to explain himself. The next day, Sunday, Paul meets a crazy Yale freshman from San Francisco and spends the night out with them. The freshman is cool with not seeing Paul in the morning, but the narrator doesn't say why. Paul reads about himself in the Pittsburgh papers after 8 almost perfect days. His father has paid back the theft and is on his way to New York, where Paul is said to have fled. When Paul feels like the show is over all of a sudden, he chooses to finish the thing splendidly. He gets too drunk and then the next morning wakes up and stares at the gun in his hotel room. He changes his mind, though, and decides that this is not the way to kill himself. He's afraid again, but not as much as he used to be. He feels sad again, like the whole world is Cordelia Street and it's eating him up. He seems to be honest with himself about being gay and realizing that it's not as bad as he thought it would be. He takes the train to Newark and then a taxi out of town, following the Pennsylvania train tracks. When he gets out of the cab, he sees that the red flower he bought is falling over. He buries it in the snow and then takes a short nap. He wakes up when he hears a train coming and jumps in front of it. Before everything goes dark, his final thoughts are of bright and interesting places such as Algeria and the Adriatic Sea.
About the author. Willa Cather was born in Virginia, but she was living on the fields of Nebraska with her family. She wanted to be a doctor, but after having a literary essay published in a newspaper while she was at the University of Nebraska, she changed her mind and chose to become a writer instead. When she was done with college, she became the executive editor of a magazine for women. Her next job was at the popular New York magazine McClure's. She also wrote reviews of the arts for other newspapers. Paul's Case and a few of her other short stories were first published in McClure's. Cather quit editing magazines in 1911 and started writing fiction full-time. Over the next few years, she published a number of novels such as O Pioneers, 1913, My Antonia, 1918, which is likely her best-known and most praised book, and Death Comes for the Archbishop, 1927, which solidified her reputation as one of the best female writers of the early 20th century. Many people across the country knew her by the 1930s, but some critics said she was becoming more and more out of touch with the problems that were happening in America at the time. She lived in New York City for almost 40 years, most of them with the editor Edith Lewis as a domestic partner. She died there in 1947.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.